Well, joining us in studio to talk about the EFF's conference and the brand that the party is and why people have a love and hate relationship with it is reputation specialist Tshepo Matseba, who joins us in studio this morning. Very good morning to you, Zoe. Thank you very much for your time. Well, essentially, SANEF has lashed out at the EFF's decision to ban certain parties, media houses that is, Amabugane, Daily Maverick, Scorpio, Report from attending its conference. They've banned some of these media houses from other conferences, not just their People's Assembly. What essentially does this, or rather how does this impact the EFF's decision on media freedom?
In South African terms, good morning to you and your viewers. I think the decision by the EFF not to allow certain media to its own events is a calculated mistake. And it's calculated because they know what they're doing. It is not an error by the EFF. It is deliberate because certain media are seen to be repeating or rehashing the same stories over and over again. And when you rehash content, there's a suspicion that there must be a deliberate intent on your part as a media house or as a journalist. And in this case, if you look at the Daily Maverick, it is not, technically speaking, in South African voter population terms, a very influential publication. It is influential in business, it is influential in terms of the viewer of the EFF, and in terms of the viewer of a typical South African voter. It is influential to certain segments that are called privileged. That could include me and you. And so I don't believe that the EFF is losing that battle. However, they may be losing a principal battle, that media freedom is very important, that we need to allow journalists to move around the country freely without interruption, without intimidation. And it comes across, they are beginning to come across like people who don't appreciate media freedom.
With that being said, what is the responsibility of media in democracy, and what sort of rights do media houses have in this case, and what sort of rights do the party have?
The difference between you and me, I'm a civilian, the difference between you and me and you and other civilians, if you may want to say, is that we are voters in the context of what has happened between the Daily Maverick and the EFF. However, in South African context, we believe, and I believe that the EFF could have done better in protecting media freedom, in the sense that the media has the duty to inform, to educate, and to an extent to entertain. But at the moment, some of the journalists in South Africa are actually entertaining more than informing and educating.
But, does a political party not have a right to exclude specific media publications or organizations?
Absolutely not.
How so?
Not. Absolutely not. Because you can't say there's a freedom of speech and cut it half. Similarly, you can't say there's freedom of media.
And then they've mentioned, the side from the EFF was that they mentioned a point of media disassociation. That's their standpoint.
Both of us know that it's ridiculous, but it's a political statement. That's why I call it a calculated mistake. It doesn't mean that they don't know that what they are doing is actually democratically inferior, democratically unfair. In fact, Dr. Ndlozi himself knows that the principle of excluding the media is wrong. However, he may argue that there is a media house that repeats the same information. And when you repeat that, like I want to say this is very important, that you repeat the same content. What is your intention? And the intention, it may seem, of the Daily Maverick and others, it seems like fishy. By the way, there's another media house that chose to walk out, which I won't mention on this platform because it's unnecessary. But we can we can talk about it. The fact that you knew in the morning. So firstly, I think there was a publicity stunt, but you knew in the morning when you send a team, and you embarrass your own team of highly qualified journalists, highly qualified, who are passionate about what they're doing. Why would you send them there and then send them out? Why would you not just not send them?
What do you make of this whole branding media saga? What has this done to brand EFF?
No, I think that brand EFF has positioned itself consistently on a number of issues. It's one of those brands that you love to hate. And it's common with great brands around the world. McDonald's, KFC. Locally, you could talk about Nando's and Chicken Licken. You love to hate them. Sometimes you love this brand, and at some point you get disappointed. And they've figured out how to build a brand and communication and information that you love. If you walked into that room yesterday, from Thursday actually, it was red and consistent. But they were consistent also around the policy issues. So they never fault on land and education. So very, very consistent. They may also go wrong, but people love that about brands. Where brands go wrong and they make mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes that they make is militancy. And you saw that when one of their security or military organizations, DOR, attacked women during a wrong month, during a wrong era. That shouldn't have happened. Even though the party has apologized profusely as a brand, but that shouldn't have happened. So the brand, if you look at the way they act, they conduct themselves, they're consistent, politically speaking, with any other political brand. In fact, if you look at the ANC, the DA, who are probably their biggest competitors, they are probably that much closer in terms of their character and sometimes their embarrassing behavior on all sides. That's how politics works.
Now, earlier on, you touched on the inclusion of their policies. You touched on their inclusion of women. Let's touch on, the establishment of a women's league being a subject which has been much debate in the party, and then of them, of course, deciding to go ahead with it. Do you think that this is going to attract more females to be joining the EFF? And what sort of change is this going to be adding to their brand? We've also seen some of the outcomes from the National People's Assembly saying that the inclusion of women has superseded it in terms of portfolio percentage ratio of men to women in the EFF.
So the president or the commander-in-chief of the EFF often talks about the reason not to include more structures. And I think he might have a point, because you don't want to build an ecosystem that you can't afford to maintain. However, I think that if you allowed a women's league to thrive, or a women's commander-in-chief, a woman commander-in-chief to come up, it would change the narrative of the EFF. Firstly, women are significant players in South Africa's economy, and definitely in politics. So this is a huge opportunity for the EFF. And if they don't do it, it will say that it will actually accentuate the narrative that the EFF's commander-in-chief wants to lead until a spiritual leader comes back.
Let's also talk about the EFF also adopting a number of resolutions at its conference. One of those being is the structure to empower and recall officials deployed in public office. What is your stance on that?
Recalling officials who are employed in public office?
Yeah.
So if you think about what's happening in Tshwane locally, and in Gauteng with Herman Mashaba leaving, if people do not behave and they don't deliver, South Africa shouldn't have to tolerate poor performance. And at the moment, we've got a horrible issue at Eskom. And so I think the EFF is on point where someone admits on national media that they actually have no clue, absolutely no clue about electricity, but they are the chairman and the acting CEO of a very significant organization. I think the EFF is on point to say, Hambagatle, Tsamai, and people should be recalled or they should actually be dismissed. Let's be more specific.
Okay, let's talk about some of the statements made by Commander-in-Chief Julius Malema over the past weekend at the National People's Assembly. One pertaining to one of the MPs, Ms. Naledi Tira, and a comment that she allegedly made around Pastor Bushiri relating to her position within the EFF. We then know that Julius Malema then took to the podium and he lambasted what seemed to relate to what Naledi Tira had said with regards to people in the party worshipping their positions more than the party themselves. Now, having a look at how this has grown on social media, many are saying that possibly she could be losing her position in Parliament for this comment that she has made, with Julius Malema saying that he is not a god, he does not expect people to worship him, and that's an issue that he's had. What sort of damage do you think that would do if a young, vibrant MP like Naledi Tira is removed because of a comment made like that?
It's a difficult one. I try not to get involved in the internal politics of the EFF because they are quite radical and dynamic. However, I think that a person should not be removed from a role based on such a minute issue as a comment about religion, as a comment about their view on religion.
Pertaining to the party.
But it's their view on religion. It may be linked to a party, but their view on religion. It would be sad to see that kind of thing happen because the EFF is actually known for empowering, but they are also known for being very aggressive, very angry. They look angry sometimes, and it's not good for a brand. It doesn't help for the EFF to look like a very, very angry. But so if I was thinking as a reputation manager of the EFF about this, I would say to Julius Malema, the Commander-in-Chief, please let us act responsibly on this specific issue.
Mm-hmm. Just lastly, before we wrap it up, I want to talk about the conversation centered around Africa pertaining to EFF.
Yes.
Them calling for one denomination of currency across Africa, them calling for a court that all Africans can be accounted to for corruption and whatnot. Let's talk about brand EFF, not only in South Africa, but 6 years down the line, and what they've seemed to infiltrate, not only here in South Africa, but across the border in other African countries and gaining the support.
So yesterday I spoke to a couple of people. One of them was from Malawi, I think, and one of them was from Lesotho. And it seems like they believe genuinely in the principles of the EFF as a brand. And I think the EFF is smart in saying our vision is bigger than South Africa. That will have one currency in Africa in the next 10 years is a dream. In the next 20 years, it's probably a dream. But it probably, as a vision, it sets an agenda and it sets them apart from their competitors in the sense that they look like a party that looks after the continent. And they invite the continent to the country. It may have been that they only SADC, but who paid a visit to their People's Assembly. But actually, it might actually be that the EFF is building a platform around the continent, and it looks attractive to the continent. But that we will have the United States of Africa in the next 20, 30 years is a pipe dream for now. However, visionary speaking, I think it's wise.
Thank you very much. We're going to wrap it up there. That was reputation specialist Tshepo Matseba